until the market kind of cools off. Because like nobody
Yeah,
wanted to
now
retire.
no, no. And now they can't find enough teachers. There's more teaching jobs than there are teachers now.
Oh, and so now it's gone the opposite way.
Now it's gone the opposite way. So now they're hiring people who are still like in the education program and like putting them on the supply list.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, at some point they're kind of just like watching the kids.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different. They're not qualified yet to like teach the curriculum, but I mean they're probably more qualified to watch and manage a classroom than a lot of people would be.
I guess, yeah. No, I'd heard of that they were going on this big spree, but at the same time that like a bunch of the school boards in Ontario are getting their budgets closely looked at. The province is now taking over some of the financing and a lot of
Yeah,
these
the
other
Toronto
things.
board specifically, I think there was like some corruption allegations and some misspending allegations, and now the province has stepped in to better manage the situation.
Yeah, I mean, I heard a story that like there was some teachers that spent I think it was like 30 or 40K on art or on like a total trip that they went to I think Italy or something. And I don't
They
it might
did.
not it might have not even been teachers. I think it might have just been like administrators, like people that work in the bureaucracy. And
Yeah,
yeah,
it was
they
like
just
board members.
yeah, they spent it on like art and it's like what is that I don't think that's going to a school. I think that's just gonna hang in your office. Like what the hell?
Yeah. Yeah, so there was that, and then I think there was also, I think the London Thames Valley Board, took, like, a really expensive trip to Toronto and stayed in a nice hotel and went to baseball games and stuff like that, and I think that was also, like, tens of thousands of dollars, so
Oh, fantastic. I'm glad they're having a
yeah,
good time. I'm glad they're
yeah, you
having a
know what?
good
And then
time.
and then as a teacher, like, I spend my extra money on, like, whiteboard markers for the kids, so
Yeah, you guys have to buy your own supplies half the time. I it's just the whole thing is just
it's
crazy.
crazy. Yeah, yeah, so but you know what? You do it for the kids, and if the kids need markers, then the kids need markers.
That's right. That's right. So we're live in any case. Thank
Cool.
you all for joining us. I appreciate you making the time today. It's Mike, right?
Yeah.
Mike. That's right. Yeah. Thank you for making the time to come on today. I realize you're out and about.
Yeah, no problem, man. Happy to do it. Yeah, I was just having a cup of coffee and got some errands to run today. So I'm glad I've been able to take a bit of a break and have a chat.
Right on. So yeah, I initially saw your work on the timeline there. What drew me to it was that it it was just photos of scenes that you'd see if you're just driving through any one of these towns, any one of these dozens of towns that exist not only in Ontario but across Canada. Where the population's low, you got maybe one bar or some street that's that's got a couple businesses on it, but otherwise everything else is just sparsely surrounded homes. But
Yeah.
what is it that got you into this kind of work in the first place?
Um, you know what? I think part of it is like the nostalgic value and maybe not the nostalgic value uh in the way that I think a lot of people are interpreting my art. So I think a lot of adults interpret the photos that I make as like a rebellion against like the more modern, urbanized kind of like lifestyle. And they see, these photos as like a testament to a simpler time, they might say. And that's not necessarily like how I see my work. I think for me, like I I like to photograph things that remind me of like when I was a kid and like those things that, kind of mean something to me in like my child self.
Hmm.
Um I guess in the sense that like as an adult, I don't know, I guess like things just don't look the same to me, but when I go out and I try and, take these pictures, I try my hardest to make them look to me like they would have when I was a kid.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah,
So I tend not to use like, special techniques or like more photographic strategies for taking pictures. I try and shoot like very matter of fact, in the way that like a kid might try and capture like these scenes.
yeah, I get what you mean, and when you mentioned that part about, some kind of rebellion, I couldn't help but think that that was kind of like self-insertion on behalf of the audience of trying to, like, impart meaning onto this. 'Cause your interpretation of it, of this perspective, um, is essentially like what I got. I wasn't like thinking initially when I saw your work that, oh, this is speaking to some kind of like anti-urbanist themes. I don't like none of that came across. It was more just like no, like these are literally, like, things that I would have seen. I remember one time my brother and I, we were taking a drive from, Manitoba. He was moving back home, um, and he's like, "Why don't you take out a flight, and then we'll, all the way to Manitoba, we'll take a car, all the way back with all my stuff loaded in it." And it's
Yep.
just these are the kinda snapshots that you would see just, like, driving, through all these towns, just, average everyday. There's nothing uniquely special about the scenery, but
No.
it has a quiet charm to it.
Yeah, that's very much the way that I see it. I know there's like I check the followers on people who like my photos and stuff like that, and they tend to have this political leaning or that political leaning, and like the things that I'm trying to create are like so non-political. Like I would like them to feel more universal in the sense that like it's just stuff that we see all the time, but like maybe we don't stop to admire it or stop to recognize that it holds like some significance to like our younger selves and things that give us like a certain feeling, right? So if you're walking down a quiet, suburban or rural street in the morning, like light hits it in a specific way that reminds me of when I was a kid and it was 8 in the morning on a Saturday and I was going out to meet some friends for, to like hang out in the park or like, play tag or whatever. And it gives me the
Mhm.
same feeling when I see these scenes and it reminds me of being a kid and like that's the thing that I'm trying to capture more than trying to remind people of a simpler time. Like it's not about that. It's about like trying to recreate the feelings that I had when I was a kid. And I would see these things and they held some sort of significance for me. In the same way that like you pass by a green electrical box and you think about like that's where we used to meet up as kids and like you take a photograph of that and to a lot of people it's like it's nothing but to me like it reminds me of when I was a kid like that's where you would meet up, right? And it's the same thing about like an old ice cream shop or even like a Tim Hortons at the corner in your
Mhm.
rural town. Like that's where we would go to meet up as kids. And like I'm not trying to make any specific statement about how urbanization has changed anything. What I'm trying to remind people of is like these really like simple places and simple moments that had like some significance to us.
Yeah, I do miss, Tim Hortons being the social setting for meetups. I remember for a hot minute, that was the place,
Yeah, man.
that was the place. They had, maybe not the best furniture, but you'd walk in, you get coffee and a donut for a buck 50 or something, and, back when you could actually roll up the rim and it wasn't an
Yeah,
app. I don't wanna sound like an old fogey, but I miss that, man, I miss that.
yeah. Like rolling up to the Tim Hortons with your friends, grabbing a cup of coffee, like skateboarding out front for like a couple hours, like that's the thing that I would like people to remember. Not that like things have changed, but just to like reflect for a moment, being like, man, being a young person was like so sweet. um and like all of these places are like so significant, and a lot of them, like it is true, like a lot of these places are disappearing, a lot of these scenes, like it's nice to be able to capture them while they're still there. But it's mostly like the nostalgic value and like less so like a political lens or like a social lens.
Yeah, I mean, I get that side of it too. People want to impart article meaning onto, well, just about anything these days. But
Oh my
yeah,
god, yeah, especially now.
yeah, it's it's a bit of a headache, but um
Yeah.
yeah, no, no, I totally get what you mean. It actually reminds me of this work that we had another artist on the show, Saskets, who does small town photography as well. He's based in the U.S., but his focus is more on like liminal spaces, so
Yep.
places that would usually be occupied by, by crowds and people, but they end up just being desolate, whether it's a small town or some country road, and it's just capturing these little moments um,
Yeah, I
of
have
life.
deep, deep admiration for a lot of the photographers that are coming out of like the Midwest US. I
Hmm.
think there's like very, very much like a bloodline of amazing photographers that have shot particular sceneries, like William Eggleston and some of the other like original like new topographic photographers and artists, um, and the ability of current U.S. photographers to capture things in a way that like so resembles that traditional new topographic like style is like so interesting to me, um, because the amount of effort that it takes to recreate that style is significant. Um, Only because like the landscapes have changed so much over the years that to really find these spots that you can kind of recreate that style is a lot of research, a lot of driving, a lot of work. Like you don't stumble upon the subject matter that a lot of these like Midwest photographers are shooting. Like you don't just like find it by accident. Like it's um, like such there's such effort behind what they're trying to do, and it looks so effortless. Like they look like snapshots that your parents would have taken in the 90s of some of these places. But the ability to like if you're shooting digital, the ability to like capture that subject matter and make it look I don't like vintage or retro terminology, but like to make it look original.
Hmm.
And a lot of the photographers that are still shooting film, and the cost and the effort to like shoot film to like recreate this style is like so impressive to me. And you have like this whole contingent of US like Midwestern photographers that are shooting in this style, and it's honestly something I try and emulate as much as I can. But the Canadian landscape is so different in terms of like architecture and the way things are developed, um, that it's even more challenging for me to try and find these types of photos and this type of subject matter in a landscape that looks so different from the U.S. landscape, and still try and capture that whole like going west vibe that like new topographic artists really captured as people started to move west and develop more of the states that were central U.S. Toward out towards California.
Yeah, no, that certainly does come through in the work. And from what at least this one photographer told me that does these kind of shots, is he'll just, go out of his way, drive out to a nearby town, and whenever he happens upon a scene, just, whips out the camera and does the work. But yeah, a lot of it was very reminiscent of the kind of work that you're doing, just in a Canadian context, obviously.
Yeah, it's a lot of driving for sure. I'm lucky being in southwestern Ontario. Which aside from a few major cities, obviously Toronto is not far. But between London and Toronto, or between London and Detroit, a lot of it is still rural, small towns. Uh, so you drive 20 minutes in any direction, and you'll happen upon a small town. And a lot of the things that I'm looking for still exist there. They're almost like frozen in time. Um, which is like for me like really magical. um even like a lot of the photos I try and capture might have existed even before I was born, which is why I really love finding retro cars and vintage cars, because you can set up a shot to look like it's from the 70s, and kind of recreate that feeling, and um, without actually having to have like lived in the 70s, which I think is like pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean,
That's a
even
shot
this.
from Toronto. I think that was like shortly after the COVID pandemic.
Oh, gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, because I was gonna say it does still have that small town feel with how dilapidated this pizzeria is, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I
it
think that's
could
Little
have fooled
Italy.
me.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, when did you initially start doing this? How long have you been doing this photography for?
So I started shooting photography right at the beginning of the pandemic, as a way to just like get outside. I was living in Toronto at the time, and I was really fortunate because I was able to capture a lot of what was happening in Toronto, like downtown Toronto, during the pandemic. And I think those are really important photos for me. But it was, street photography was never really something that I was, really, really excited about. Other people do it way better than I do. I feel like capturing like these quiet moments in rural Ontario kind of suits my personality a little bit more. But I was lucky to get started in Toronto at a really interesting time. Um, and then I think as things started to open up, and I got out of the city a little bit more, I really fell in love with kind of like the rural outskirts of Toronto. And then from there, moved to London, and then it kind of really took off from there. Only because the availability of subject matter grew exponentially, having moved out of the big city.
Gotcha, gotcha. And so you did you start with film initially, or was it just digital and you migrated towards film eventually?
So I've done a little bit of film here and there. I was definitely like enamored with film photography for a short period, but now everything I do is digital.
Okay, and why the switch? Is it just a matter of expenses? Because I'd imagine that buying the film, getting it developed, and all that is still quite a bit of a hassle.
Yeah, I don't like, part of it was expensive. It's definitely expensive to shoot film, and hats off to everyone who's still doing it because it's obviously an incredible format, and you can take pictures in a way that like digital will never be able to replace. So part of it is it is expensive. The other part of it was just convenience. So I've had a bunch of different cameras over the years, but recently I started shooting with the Ricoh GR3, and it's like very much point and shoot. And I went from carrying around like two or three lenses and like a bigger camera, to a really small point and shoot that doesn't even have like a viewfinder, so it just has a screen. It's a lot more discreet, which I like. So now like shooting on digital just makes way more sense because I can carry the camera around with me all the time. Super small, super discreet, so I can take photos like while I'm on the move and nobody really notices. And I feel like it's just made taking pictures a lot easier for me, and I'm more willing to do it if I don't have like the overhead of developing the film and carrying around a big camera and bag all the time. Because I keep a camera with me all the time, and having the Ricoh has just made things like a lot simpler. It fits in my pocket, so a lot of the things that I capture now, I might not have been able to capture if I were lugging around a big camera of mine. I had to set everything up before I could take the shot.
Yeah, because it can certainly become quite a collection. I remember when I was like at my peak trying to collect lenses and whatnot, and now I just find a lot of them are gathering dust because I'd like to have like an 18 to 55 or maybe even
Yep,
like a macro lens or even a zoom lens up to 300 mil, but
yep.
beyond that, like don't really need anything. Even in like an 1855, like that'll serve you well for 90% of the work that the average person needs done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I first got into gear, which is like I think for a new photographer, uh, almost a thing that you can easily tether to because you're like really interested in photography. You're probably not that good, but one thing you do get is like spending money.
Hmm.
So you buy new gear and you think that'll help, and you see shots on Instagram or X, and you're like, okay, like how did they shoot that? What did they shoot it on? It's a question I get a lot, like, oh, what camera are you using? Because you think like maybe that'll make the difference. So I got like super into prime lenses, not a bunch of prime because they shoot faster and they're sharper and
Mhm.
all this other shit. And I shoot with the GR now, which has a prime lens. It's a fixed lens. I think it's a 42 millimeter equivalent. So I shoot at that focal length all the time. I never break out, prime lenses. I did recently buy a zoom lens. I think it was, I can't remember what the max focal length was. It might have been like 90 millimeters, something like that. And like I'll use that more often than I would use a prime lens at this point. But even that is too much of a hassle, and I just shoot with the GR now.
Yeah, yeah, 'cause if you're not careful, you can find yourself with a mountain of equipment that just that doesn't end up getting used.
Yeah,
Um,
not
and
at all.
and sometimes
Yeah, I think
it's just the simplest setup that'll get the job done just right.
yeah, so right now, like with the GR, I shoot I think, f8 or f10 all the time. My shutter speed stays at the smallest shutter speed that I can shoot without like any shake. And then I use like an auto ISO option, but like I'm not changing anything. I don't see a scene and I'm like, oh, this would look a lot better, with different f stop or like um, I just like I shoot it kind of all the same, right? So there's not a lot of like blur in my photos. There's not, a lot of like artistic approaches to shooting things. Like I really like William Eggleston's idea of like, democratic photography where like everything in the image has equal focus, and whether it's like a piece of garbage on the ground or like a beautiful landscape behind it, they're all shot with like equal importance. And I like, not only does that simplify photography like a shit ton, I think it just also gives like a really cool documentary feel about it, where like me as the artist is not saying this part of the photo is important and the rest of the photo is not important. Like it all comes together to create that scene, and all the components of the photo are important, and I'm not really trying to like de-emphasize this or that in favor of something that I've deemed beautiful, versus like saying everything in the photo is of equal value. So being able to shoot with like really consistent settings, a really consistent focal length, has simplified shooting, but is also, opened me up to being more flexible with a scene. So, for example, if you look at William Eggleston's a lot of his work, um, he might have like a telephone pole in a really awkward location of the photo, and it feels really out of place, but he didn't give a shit. Like that's what was there. That's what he shot. So you can see in that photo there, you've got like the big telephone pole. It's kind of like sitting and obscuring what some would say is like the main focus of the shot, which is that barn. He didn't try and like move around to get it out of view. He didn't crop it
Mhm.
out. He didn't like he shot it as if it had equal importance to the barn. And like I think that's such a cool perspective.
Yeah, that I totally get what you mean. Because initially starting out in my own experience, I didn't know how to properly, like, frame or compose a shot, and I think eventually it just settled into, like, just a feeling, you know? Like,
Yeah.
if I just felt that the shot was good enough, or the I don't know, there's just something about it that was pleasing to the eye, I'd go ahead and take the photo, and then eventually it just becomes kind of second nature. Because, as you said, it's getting into it initially, like, as an artistic throughput. You think, okay, well, how am I supposed to compose a shot like this? Am I supposed to focus on this kind of subject? Oh, there's all these intentions that you can have for the setup. And eventually I got too frustrated with trying to keep all of that in my mind, and I was like, "Okay, like, what? I'm just gonna take photos of things that I like and things that I think look nice, and then whatever happens, happens." Because, like, that just any kind of, like, stress that was involved in the process, I was like, I don't want that. I don't want that involved in any way whatsoever. Like, I'm not trying to shoot for Nike. I'm not, like, going out
No.
here, like, trying to capture some kind of social media trend. I like the shot, good enough for me.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and I think as like a new photographer, like you read books or you hear posts or you talk to people, and you hear things like, "Oh, you've got like too many extraneous things in this photo," or they use words like, "Oh, there's like clutter along the edges and stuff like that." And it's like when you're shooting things in real life, there's going to be clutter. There's going to be, what other people would call distractions. But
Mhm.
really, like, you're shooting what's there. And I think the documentary aspect of William Eggleston's work, obviously alongside his incredible artistic eye for color, and for the scene, obviously. But those little things didn't seem to bother him. Like, if I'm interpreting his work correctly, he didn't mind if something looked out of place, or if something was like obstructing a view of something that others would deem important to the shot. He got what he got in the shot because he liked the way that it looked, and it didn't seem like he worried too much about clutter in the scene. I used to I love photographing old cars. And just like anecdotally, when I would go out and I would see a beautiful old car on a street, if there were newer cars around it, I would try and like maneuver myself to cut out the newer cars and make sure they weren't really in the scene so that the
Mhm.
scene would just focus on the old car. And I probably messed up what could have been really great shots of photos that I would really enjoy today, or not taking the picture because the new car was too much in the frame. And like, what a waste, man. What a waste. Like, you don't have to worry about stuff like that. Like, if the old car looks cool and it's in a cool setting and there's a new car near it, like, who cares? Like, shoot the cars. Like, you can shoot both of them.
Yeah, it is kinda weird how that, this idea of, like, expectations that we have for what we think is a good scene, is shaped by all these different things. Because it's not even necessarily that, you would have had to been growing up, like, reading photography books. It's like, no, well, you just through just watching, like, commercials or TV or even movies, we have this set of ideas that we think of like, "Oh, this is what would make for a good shot." In this kind of a setting. But then when we go out and try to recreate that, the I don't know, it just something about the process it just fails. Well, it's like, yeah, well, because you're not a director. You're not directing people like to put the car here or to have the person do this or to have this kind of like light. If you're especially if you're just out in the world and just casually taking photos of stuff, at that point you're just like, okay, well, the the shot already exists. It's out there. There's not really much framing that I have to force upon it, and any kind of like not intrusive, but any kind of like forcing a certain frame on a shot. You end up getting in your own way.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I think since I started, taking more pictures, and I watch a ton of movies. I love movies. Um, sometimes I'll watch a movie and I'll say, "Wow, what an absolutely stunning shot! I wish I could take photos like that." But then when you really look at it, you're like, "Okay, this director of photography or director like had ultimate control over how this scene looked,
Hmm.
and they had a pole in the middle of their shot." So like I still think this is a great shot. That director thought it was a great shot. They used it, but like why am I trying to maneuver myself to edit out polls when, some of the best directors, some of the, the best tastemakers in the world when it comes to cinematography, they're not trying to edit out, these little things, or, they let the character get a little too close to the edge of the frame and, they still thought it was a good shot. Why am I being so hard on myself about trying to like recreate a specific look or a specific framing when, the best of the best are making artistic choices that maybe wouldn't fall in line with what you might read on like a photography forum.
Hmm. Yeah, and ultimately, I think that's why I love photography as a medium because like realistically, there is no, I mean, just like painting, there's absolutely no right or wrong way to go about it. Now, if you want to evoke a certain feeling, if you want to capture a certain theme, like obviously, okay, you got to be able to control some of the factors. But realistically speaking, um, there's there's just about no limits with it. There's not really any constraints except those that you set upon it. You know,
Yeah.
there's not really much of a rubric here.
No, definitely not. And I think, for a lot of photographers who are just starting out, you see, there are absolutely incredible photographers on all platforms. And you think like, oh, why don't my pictures look like their pictures? I'm gonna try harder to make my pictures look like their pictures because I love their photos so much. And I think that's a really great way to get started. Like having some sort of influence or like seeing something in the world being like, oh, that photographer would probably take a picture of that. So I'm gonna take a picture of that. I think it's a great way to get started. But I mean, it goes back to your point about expectations where, you get back into Lightroom or wherever, and you're like, well, I took a picture of something that I thought they would take a picture of. I edited it in a way that I thought they would edit it, but like it doesn't look like I was hoping it would look.
Hmm.
And at some point, like you have to get over that. And for me, it was really hard because every time I looked at my photos and compared them to other people online, I was like, mine are, they lack what other people are able to do, or why aren't my photos as good as they are? Um, and eventually you kind of get over it and your photos start to look like your photos. And at that point, you're like, okay, this is actually kind of cool. Like, yeah, my photos don't look like all these guys that I look up to. Um, but like, I now feel like when I look at the photos that I've taken, they have like a cohesive feel, they have a cohesive look, and I'm more excited about photos that look like my photos than I was about photos that I thought might look like someone else's photos, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. At one point, you just hit your stride, and you realize that you realize like the certain aspects of your photography or your work that make up your own kind of like character or flavor to it, that any kind of expectations that they're not even relevant anymore, because we're
Yeah.
at the beginning, you're like you're trying to think, well, what is my, how do I even go about like developing a style as a photographer? How do I do this? How do I do that? And if I've learned anything, it's just by going out and shooting, and then coming back, editing, and then eventually out of that, once you've reached your like 10,000 hours equivalent of photography, or 10,000 shot, then you're like, oh, okay, now I've kind of hit my stride. Now I know uh where my comfort lies.
Yeah, and I think you start to like, think about things a little differently, and then you kind of like, your process gets a little bit different. And instead of thinking things like, how would they edit this, or like, what are other people doing? You just kind of do shit that you like, right? Like most of my photography is edited on the warm side. When I think like, for a long time, the prevailing kind of approach was to have like cool undertones to your photos. And I did the cool undertone like cinematic thing when I first started getting into photography, because that's what like a lot of what was happening on Instagram was this like cool cinematic, like, you know, cool undertones, really warm highlight,
Hmm.
teal and orange thing. And like a lot of that stuff is absolutely incredible. I could never make it work, and it never looked the way that I wanted it to look, and it looked like a cheap knockoff. Um, and it didn't suit me at all. And then as I started doing things the way that I thought I liked them, I really love well, what is that Kodak film? Kodak Gold. I
Hmm.
really love Kodak Gold, and I really love the warm, nostalgic. Like I just took this out of a disposable camera at the beach with my mom and my dad in 1990. Like I love that look, and you don't capture that look with cool undertones. Like all of those photos came out like super warm, and whether I'm shooting like nighttime or daytime or winter or summer. Like I really love that like warm feel to photography. So now whenever I edit anything, like I always trend more towards the warmer side, even though it seems like if you look at like the most popular, photographers on any platform, like a lot of people kind of trend towards those like cool undertones, which I think is great, but like didn't really suit me. So, I try and keep things like really warm and really, that reminds me of those like, 1990s snapshots out of a disposable Kodak Gold camera.
Right on. And so in terms of your body of work now, because I noticed you don't have any like prints that you sell or any shop that you've set up. Is there any thought that you've given to that to commercializing it in any way, or is it just hobby for the moment?
Yeah, I've not thought about commercializing it. I get DMs every once in a while asking for prints. I don't know that that's something I'm going to do. I really, having spent the last year, 10 years in tech, like I really think the NFT scene is pretty cool, but not necessarily something that I'm interested in doing myself. I do really love the idea of people putting up my pictures in their homes. So I've said to anyone, I've said to the people on X, download my pictures, print them at Walmart if you want to. I would love for people to send me pictures of my photos on their walls. If people want like a high res copy, like send me a DM. I will send you a high res. I'm not overly interested in commercializing it or selling prints. Like I have a job. That's the job that I love to do, and this is more like I don't know. I just want to do it because I like it. And if people want a photo, like they are free to have it for free and print it and put it up.
Right on. No, that's awesome. I mean, that's democratizing photography as far as it gets.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna shoot the photos anyways, and I would shoot them even if nobody saw them. So at least knowing that people are seeing them is cool. Knowing that people think that they're good enough to put up in their house is, like I think probably the coolest thing you can do for an artist.
Right on. Do you think that at any point you would combine your two passions, teaching and photography, to actually do some classes, or
That's interesting. I haven't really thought about it. I mean, for the most part, just like with the photos themselves, um, if people have questions, not that I'm an expert in any way, happy to answer any questions. Like, I'm not secretive about my editing process. I did release two Lightroom presets for free that you can download out of one of my Google Drives, which are the exact settings that I use for the photos that I put online. So I'm not precious about any of these things or how I shoot or when I shoot or times of day or locations, Lightroom settings, like all of those. I am totally open to sharing. Um, just because I love making art and I love helping other people, and I'm happy to share that information, man. Like especially like I'm not really competing in selling photos or anything like that. So I'm an open book. So if people have questions, they should DM me.
right on? No, because I was just thinking like one of the things that would help is if there was not necessarily like a super technical class on it, because there's plenty of tutorials and whatnot that people can find online, but just the value of knowing how to go about the creative process, that I think there's not enough instruction. At least, like I didn't see a lot of that growing up, going to the art class. That yeah, there was a lot of these things that we had to learn about, basic fundamentals and all this art history and whatnot. But actually getting into the creative process and what it means to, just keep taking the shots, or keep, like pumping out paintings and whatnot, and getting comfortable in that area of exploration. There's a real value in that. I mean, Rick Rubin, his whole thing is about tapping into the creative process and knowing how to take advantage of it when it hits. And he's working with some of the greatest artists alive now, but he's had like no instruction. He doesn't even know how to play an instrument, but all
Yeah.
the best musicians, they want him because that the value that he brings, it's not that he has all this technical skill. It's like, no, he knows how to go with the flow and how to uh, take advantage of inspiration when it hits, and there's a real value in that.
Yeah, you know what? It's such a good example. Like a lot of it is taste, right? Like, Rick Rubin, he's got taste, and he knows what people are going to like. And I think a lot of people are probably born with taste, but I think it's a learnable skill, right? Like if I showed you the photos that I first started taking, um, like I had not developed an eye. My photos looked very amateur, like no real subject, no real nothing. And I think for a lot of people that can be discouraging. You look at your first set of photos that you take and you're like, man, these are kind of shit. I don't know if I'm any good at this. And
Mhm.
the reality is like you're probably not very good at it. And a lot of people see that as discouraging, and I think a lot of people see that as encouraging. And for anyone out there who's kind of like struggling to develop a style that they feel like suits them or feels good for them, just take more pictures.
Yeah, that's really all that you can do is recognize that this is a process that's not going to unfold within an afternoon or a day. This is something that's a little bit more long term, and being comfortable with um maybe not failure, because failure isn't like you can't really fail at art, but being comfortable with not being able to attain the vision that you have for like whatever creative output you have. That's very important because it's not going to happen, as you said, in the first couple times. It's going to take a lot of iterations before you actually understand uh, the medium that you're working with and how to best attune it to what you're looking to get out of the shot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, probably the thing that impacted me more than anything, in terms of like how to develop, my own philosophy around how I shoot, is, buying and reading like photo books of artists that you really like. It's one thing to like view their work on like your phone or like a screen or whatever, which is like cool and everything to like figure out which artists you kind of resonate with. um but then buying their book and sitting down and looking at their photos in print, um like a physical print, where you can really look at it and figure out why you like it and what you like about it. And sometimes there's some information about how they took the shot or what the settings were, and really just sitting and reflecting on what you like about their work can really help you develop your own style, almost as much as just going out and taking photos. Because in your brain, what you like. Do I like single subject images? Do I like scenes? Do I like people? Do I like something that's more staged? Or do I like something that kind of unfolds in front of me? And from there, I think you can really start to distill a style that kind of suits you. But unless you really explore the work of other artists and other photos and really get into the nitty gritty of what you like about them, it's going to be hard to develop a style. Because I mean, you can go out there and shoot 10,000 photos, but if you're not sure what you like and you're just kind of taking photos as you go, not only will it, your work lack cohesion, but I don't think you really like develop an artistic vision unless you know what it is that you like. So for me, like I really like full scenes with a lot of context, and I've tried shooting things closer, and I've tried doing single subject images, um, and they never made me feel the way that I wanted to feel about my photography, despite you know common knowledge being you need to find a single subject in your photo, and that needs to anchor the photo, and everything else needs to build around it to really highlight that subject. And although that I think is a really common way of shooting, it just never fit me, which is why I used a wider lens. I love the context. I love knowing that a house is on a street and that house has a tree in front, and there's a light on in one of the windows, and having all that context makes the scene complete. Whereas you could shoot just the house, and for me that's just it's not enough. it doesn't give me that same feeling as having like the context.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I
Um,
get what you mean.
yeah, but I learned what I liked and what I didn't like by reading and looking at, a lot of different artist books like Heido, William Eggleston. Like I have a bunch of like their books, and just like taking the time to really look at the photos and analyze them. What kind of angles do they use when they're shooting architecture? What color tones are they looking for? Um, are they high or low when they shoot it? Is it very matter of fact, or is it artistic and stylish? And then you can kind of discern what you like, and bring that into your photography.
Yeah, I'm curious to know if you had ever heard of Billy Din's work.
I have. He is one of the photographers, when I first started taking photos, that I wished I was more like,
Hmm.
and would compare my photos to his photos. He has that beautiful cinematic quality. Um, he brings a lot of context into his photos. They have this crisp, um, kind of sharp look, but they're so soft and painterly. Um, Absolutely incredible work. My work will never look like Billy D's, and I came to terms with that at some point, and now I'm lucky to be able to shoot like I shoot. But there's a photographer where it's like you compare your work to theirs, and you wonder, should I be taking pictures? Should we just leave it to the experts? Because this guy is incredible.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean when I because the algorithm will pump artists like him like to your recommendations the moment that you join any of these platforms and you start gauging an interest in photography, and he really stands out among his own peers. Just the way that he's able to capture these, for lack of a better word, still life moments that are um, I don't know. In a way, it actually reminds me. There's this subreddit called "Accidental Renaissance" where somebody will take a
Yep,
photo and it happens to look or has the composition of a Renaissance painting, and it's exactly what his work reminds me of, where he's just able to capture these scenes of. I mean, it's ordinary mundane life. He's not like taking the photos of Olympic athletes going for their big jump or anything like that. It's just average everyday people going about their business, but the way that he frames everything uh makes it look like it's a still out of a movie.
absolutely. And as an artist, you ask yourself, how did he do it? How does he get these great shots? And I think part of it is he probably shoots a ton.
Hmm.
Um, and if you shoot, thousands of pictures in a year, you're going to get a few of these gems, hopefully. And he probably has a huge archive of absolutely amazing shots. He's an amazing photographer. And out of all of those amazing shots, these are the best of the best. And those are the ones that he chooses to put out on social media. He seems to be more, discerning about what he shares online. I think for a lot of smaller photographers, with smaller follower counts, we can't be as discerning. We need to post regularly to keep up engagement, grow our following. So a lot of times we'll share things that we're like, oh, okay, it's an okay shot. Like people will probably like it. Maybe they'll get some likes. Get a little bit of traction. That's cool. Someone like Billy, like he doesn't have to do that anymore. He can share one or two or three absolute bangers a year,
Hmm.
and that's probably enough to keep his social media uh, growing, and keep interest in him growing. He doesn't have to share as many of those not so great shots to keep engagement high.
Yeah, and I figure you're right on that in terms of the amount of shots he takes versus the ones that he shares, just because um, all of these moments are just people in crowds or just going about their day, and not every single shot of that is cinematic. But like every now and then, like I'll pass by downtown or just a street or something, and I'll think for a slight second, like, oh, in that millisecond there was something there. There was some kind of a shot, just the perspective that I had. and then you
Yep.
move on from that moment, and then it just becomes an everyday average scene. It's not worth giving a second look. But I guess he's just gotten so good at his timing and knowing where to be in these places that that he's just like, all right, my shutter speed is I don't know what it could be, but I'm sure
Yeah.
it's quick enough to capture enough frames of it that then he comes back to his lab and is like, all right, out of these 100 shots, there's a good one here.
Yeah, and I mean, if think about all the amazing moments he's captured versus the amazing moments he's probably missed. We miss those shots too. I think the difference is, the volume of those moments that he captures is probably 10 times greater than the volume of moments that we capture. So uh, probably out there taking a ton of photos, capturing these absolutely stunning moments, but probably missing a fair amount of them too, where he's just like us, being like, should have pulled the trigger, you know?
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily look like he's uh, like going out of his way, just like from the composition of the shots, that his entire goal is to take photos. It seems like, at least like I would assume, that he's just going about his day, and he just happens to have a camera with him. So if he goes to the
Yeah,
cafe, has his croissant, reads the news, what have you, but then like at some point the light just hits through the windows a certain way that he's like, all right, there's actually something to be captured here. But otherwise, yeah, I'd imagine it's just him living his life, and he just happens to have his camera with him, and then once inspiration hits, he just goes with it.
yeah, but some of those shots are crazy. I would, even in my best form, I don't think I would see things the way that he sees them. And but that's the way Billy sees things, and we see things the way that we see things. And I think there's room for both in terms of their artistic value. And I think not getting caught up in, why doesn't my work look like Billy's work? Um, Gives you the freedom to make things look like your work, which is cool too.
Oh,
I
absolutely,
think
yeah.
Yeah, I think someone from Instagram, or it might be on X, that I think, smaller photographer, but hugely influential in what I really liked. There's a guy, he goes by Dad Wilder. I think his real name is Chad Wilder. Um, Great photographer. There's a bunch of photographers out in the state of Washington that are shooting uh, that area. Has a very Twin Peaks kind of vibe. Very cool new topographic style. Uh, he was really influential when I first started taking photos. I really wanted my photos to look like his. Probably, doesn't, not even on his radar that there are people out there that want to mimic his work. 'Cause he's relatively small photographer. He's definitely indie, um, but such a good eye. So he doesn't get the same probably exposure that someone like Billy does, uh, but still like so influential on a lot of newer photographers.
Oh, yes, I think I found him here just now.
Yeah, stunning work, such a great eye, very very much what I would aspire to be more like.
Yeah, I mean the composition and everything, it's very similar to what you and Saskets do. Obviously got his own little flavor to it, but no, I see I see the commonalities here for sure.
Yeah, great photographer. Would definitely recommend people follow him. Deserves the praise that I'm giving him for sure. Very cool work. Is has more of like a lonely, evocative feel to it, which I've always really admired. Um, you can tell he's less about the nostalgic, childlike value that I'm trying to capture, and more about um seems like the loneliness of some of these scenes, the quietness of some of these scenes. Stunning photographer though. Look at that. Crazy.
Yeah, it's like moments that you would capture if you're just like taking a road trip somewhere and you're just in between towns and there's no rest stop, so you just got to go outside and piss, and then you for a second you look out and you're hit with this kind of like desolate loneliness because you're in the middle of nowhere, but there's just something about the scenery that you're like, huh, that's interesting. Like it kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah, very beautiful, but also very gritty and yeah, just a great eye, great color. Has a very unique editing style. You can tell it's very unique to him. Uh, I think crushes the whites a lot. Not a lot of highlight. Very flat kind of images, uh, but still with so much dimension. Very cool photographer.
Yeah, the colors are very muted. There's not really um anything like that strong that kind of hits you in the face over it. It's just yeah, it's just one of those scenes like you wake up, it's the dead of winter. It's 8 a.m., but the sun's not still up, and you're just walking
Yep.
through the street, and yeah, that's exactly what you would see.
Yeah. It's cool. Some of these, artists are able to capture images like this, and if you saw them in real life, they feel like nothing. But
Hmm.
then when someone with a good eye puts the camera to them, um, they're actually there's something. And I don't know how people find the difference, or how someone like Chad sees these things and sees that it would make a great photo. Because someone walking their dog at that same time, at that moment, might see these things
Hmm.
and not see the beauty in them, not think to capture it. But he's incredible at it.
Yeah, right on. And so you say you've mentioned that this is like a trend that you've noticed that a lot that there's quite a few people that are going for this kind of style. I mean, this is the third photographer that I've come across, yourself included, that is kind of embarking on this style. I'm wondering if it's like um some kind of like an just an organic movement that's come about just as a result of people having lived in urban centers for so long that now they're sick of it, and especially during COVID a lot of people moved out of those kind of areas, and now they're just capturing the life around them because it's so different than what they were used to before.
Yeah, I think it's always been there. So banal photography, banality, um, the new topographic movement of I think it was the 50s, 60s, like Germany, and particularly a lot of US artists at that time um, captured the ordinary life at the time. A lot of pictures of houses, a lot of pictures of cars, parking lots, housing developments. And it was kind of a reaction to high art photography. It was still a lot of it was black and white, but pioneers like William Eggleston started moving into color, which was considered more pedestrian. So this movement has been around for probably since the 1950s, 1960s. So there's always been a group of artists that have been capturing this subject matter, this style. Um, Probably not as popular as some of the high art photography or fine art photography, um, because of the subject matter. But there's a huge following for it on Instagram and on X of people doing very similar work. Um, and it's definitely, I would say, comes from a long line of incredible photographers that started off taking pictures of things that are the same subject matter that I take pictures of, suburban housing, suburban neighborhoods, just the ordinary things that we see in real life. And there's definitely beauty in the ordinary, and taking the time to stop and look at the things around you and recognize how beautiful they are. um, and I think for a lot of photographers that are starting out looking for subject matter, there's probably no better subject matter than the things that you would find in your own neighborhood. And starting there, I think, is a really good thing for a lot of photographers, um, especially those who think maybe I won't get into photography because I'm not near anything cool, or I don't live in a big city that has cool buildings. And the financial district in downtown Toronto has these cool, giant buildings and lots of people. You don't need all of
Mhm.
that to take really good photos. And I think this tradition of artistry and photography is rooted in that mentality of getting out there and exploring what's around you and appreciating it, um, and treating it, in the same way that I was talking about democratic photography, treating it as important as fine art photography or this big city architecture photography. Um, Go take pictures of stuff in your neighborhood. You can make it look good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, even if you get on the level of like macro photography, just taking a close up of something on your desk or what have you. I mean, just your entire immediate surroundings is just. I mean, it's just waiting to be captured. Just depends on what you actually like yourself. But I only mentioned that that reactive element to it because I remember I interviewed this 3D visual artist from Poland who specialized in creating these really futuristic scenes, and he pointed out this interesting split where in the West we have this, at least in in the 3D design world, we have this fascination with like post-apocalyptic scenery.
Hmm.
And I had asked him, I'm like, so why is it that you think that you never kind of gravitated towards that and you went towards more of like a futuristic, like neo futurist vibe? And he's like, well, look, man, I grew up in post World War II Poland, and if I wanted to see anything post apocalyptic, I just look outside my window.
Fair enough.
So his his drive and what he gravitated towards was the opposite of what was around him. So I was thinking, well,
Oh, interesting.
maybe as human beings we are reactionary, and so usually we want something other than what is around us or what is presented in front of us. And I figured that maybe this kind of movement in photography, obviously it's existed before, as you said, but
Sure.
in the modern context, maybe it's just a reaction that people are just, there's a group of people that are getting tired of living in the city. They're tired of like the high end super manufactured kind of photography where they just want to capture something that's a little bit more real, something a little bit more organic. And it's obviously impossible to say whether there is a new movement or how you can go about analyzing that. But I figure some of it is a reaction to people just having enough of modern life and wanting something different.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and it makes me think more about why do people want to consume this type of photography more than why do people want to shoot this kind of photography. I think we all have different reasons for shooting what we shoot, and whether it's a reaction to more of the modernism or urbanization of the area that you live in, or that nostalgic quality, or the political lens, or whatever it is that motivates you to shoot. But to your point, what is the reason why this work resonates with people, and why people want to consume it? And I think that's a really interesting thing to think about, because I actually don't know the reason why. I don't know if I assume, or I think that a lot of the pictures I take are consumed by, I would say, younger folks, and I don't know if that's uh, a reactionary reason, or a nostalgic reason, or just an overall aesthetic reason. Um, but it's a cool thing to think about because it is very banal. It is very ordinary. It is things that you could see if you drove outside the city for 15 minutes. But why does that resonate with you in photo when maybe it doesn't resonate with you as much in real life, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, this one especially, I like how you managed to carve out a little canvas of a shot here.
Yeah, that was a cool one. That was along, I can't remember which highway it was, actually, now that I think about it. But it was just off the highway. So I had to pull over, get out of the car, trek through what was clearly an unmowed area for the last 10 years, and was lucky enough to get a cool shot of the interior through the window.
Yeah, no, it comes, yeah, and it's the framing and everything, especially the fact that the outside is like basically fully white. It
Yeah,
helps the contrast in the in the middle. Oh, that's a beautiful shot.
thank you. Yeah, I really, that house was a good find. I especially loved, there was this bluish, marinish wallpaper that you can kind of see.
Mm.
Not a color that you see in modern houses, and it's absolutely stunning. Uh, there's a few other shots of that house, and it was just such a cool find. I there's a lot of photographers out there that I know love to shoot abandoned buildings and stuff like that. I do it every once in a while. It's not the main subject matter that I really like. I do really like things that still feel kind of alive. I do love shooting small towns um, because there's such a sense of life in them. But when you see a cool house like this, you got to stop for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that wallpaper reminds me of I think it's called seafoam green, which
Yeah.
is the color that they use to paint the inside of submarines in the U.S. Navy, because apparently they found it's the most psychologically like calming color. And the weird part is that the research that they conducted in order to figure this out is under like top secret like clearance. You can't like there's no like public analysis of it, so nobody really knows what the inspiration behind it is. But apparently they did all this research into what was the most calming thing to put inside a pressurized tube full of men that have to go underwater for weeks on end, and that's what they came up with.
No shit. No,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. Okay, I didn't know that, but yeah, all the same, it was a very cool find.
And what does that looks
This
like?
photo I really liked. It's cool contrast between the car, which is obviously gone to shit, and a swing set for some reason.
Yeah, I was gonna say it had the shape of a beetle until I saw like the back fender here, and it's definitely too long to be that.
Yeah.
Uh, but I'd bet there's quite a few of these hanging around in front of front yards of houses that people have. I mean, like every now and then when we go to we drive up to a farm to like go berry picking or something, there's always these like
Yep.
Thunderbirds and all these old cars with like a
Yeah.
for sale sign um just right in front. And I've always wanted to be in a position in life where I could actually take advantage of that. Just knock on their door and be like, "Yeah, I'll take it, man. That's a rare find. I'll gladly take this car off your hands." Because there's some pretty cool ones out there.
Man, you should. I wasn't really a car person for a long time, um, but recently very into cars. So I think at some point I'll probably sell my house, get something smaller with a big garage. I got a 96 Camaro a couple years ago that I've been slowly working on and changing out some of the parts. And I'm with you, man. There are days where I see the coolest cars and I can't bear to drive away from them, and I would buy them in a second.
Oh, right on. So this is the one that you're working on now?
Yep. See there's a green one there, like that green.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, American Muscle, man. Can't get much better than that.
Oh yeah. I have I have a strong affinity towards muscle cars, especially. I always forget. I think it's the Chevy, the classic. I think that's the model. I'm not much of a car guy, so I'm gonna
Oh,
butcher the.
the Chevelle.
I think it's the no, the Mustang. Yeah, sorry, the Mustang.
Oh, the Ford Mustang. My dad, he had a 1973 Mustang Mach 1 fastback, absolutely beautiful car, never ran. We probably moved it house to house for like 15 years. Never ran. He eventually sold it to some kids that wanted to work on a car. And if I ever had the money, I would buy that car in a second. It is for me the car.
Yeah, there's just something about it, whether it's like the streamlined design or the like the grill,
Ugh,
and the power too. I mean, it's unlike anything else on the road these days.
you know what? I in my brain I keep thinking if if Tesla could figure out a way to make, either like integrate a Tesla motor and sensors into a classic muscle car, or put out an electric vehicle that is a classic muscle car design, I would do it in a second. But I think for the rest of my life, at least in the summers, I will always drive a classic muscle car, whether it's gas or not. And I just need someone to figure out how to build an EV that looks like a 73 Mustang. And then I will buy a Mustang. But
Yeah, that
new cars, they look too new. I want the badass muscle car.
Yeah, they look too new and they all have like the similar shapes and styles to them.
Yeah.
And I heard this one interpretation. I think it was Joe Rogan that said it on his podcast. He's like the reason why these cars had this all this character back in the 60s and 70s is because I mean, well, long story short, just because of the drugs people were consuming back then. Everyone was doing psychedelics and weed and all this crazy stuff that just gave them all these ideas. And then we get into like late 70s, 80s where everything moves into like cocaine and speed and
Yeah.
more like uppers kind of vibe to it. And that then shapes the cars. And then now we're living in an age where I don't know. I think there's too many cooks in the kitchen. There's just the amount of people that have to be involved in a car design and all these companies that I think in the US there's really only been two that have never gone bankrupt, which I believe is it Ford or
Couldn't tell you. Probably Ford and Chevy
well I
or
know
GM.
Tesla's one of them. Tesla's
Oh, is
one
it?
of them, but I think GM is probably the other that haven't gone bankrupt. So there's not really I would assume so. There's not really a lot of like room in like design to be crazy, or they've become so formulaic that they know like what's gonna pump them money. But yeah, I would love, like you said, to see more creativity and more ingenuity in car design because every now and then like I mean even the colors, everyone's like either gray or champagne or you
Yeah.
see the occasional red. Um, but there's not really that many like variation in colors. I mean, I'm living in a unique area in Toronto where like there's a lot of international students and a lot of foreign import cars, and there's a Ferrari dealership just like a couple streets from where I live. So I'll
Yep.
see like these supercars. Like yesterday, I saw a Lambo. Just by like a subway station, which is the wildest thing. I wish I had a camera on me. That would have been a crazy shot to take. But yeah, besides that, all the shapes and colors have just kind of morphed into the same thing. Everything's made of plastic. I don't
Yeah.
know. It doesn't feel genuine. It doesn't feel real. It's like it's so commercialized.
They're very commercialized. They're very bland. I mean, they're good looking cars. Don't get me like a Tesla's a good looking car.
Hmm.
Um, but it's you know what? Maybe it's. I think people value luxury, and a car needs to look luxurious now. Whereas I think in the '70s, uh, cars look tough. And you don't even, newer Camaros and newer Mustangs, they look luxurious. They don't look tough. Whereas, look at this Mustang. That is a tough car.
Yeah, compared to like a 2025. I mean, this just looks like a Hot Wheels car.
Yeah. And nice car. But it doesn't have that same toughness. 70s like badassery.
Yeah, it's also something I noticed when I go to the auto show here in Toronto every now and then, and we went with the past year with my friends, and it was I don't know, it was all right. Like you obviously had like the luxury brands, like Jaguar, or Mercedes that had quite a few inventive designs. But overall, like especially like the Ford trucks, they all obviously look the same, just different heights off the ground or
Yep.
like different features and campers and whatnot. Um, and then when we go to the vintage car section, it was like every single one of them was a unique thumbprint
Yeah.
of a car, and you could clearly tell that there was an intent behind the design. And then once we left that section, everything just kind of blended into the same shade or same shape. And yeah, we gotta make cars great again, because at the end of the day, like EV or not, like it doesn't matter. There's got to be some kind of ingenuity or some creative force that we can tap into, and I think
Yeah,
it's good.
I
I think it's gonna
agree.
come.
I think the love that people have for these old cars, I don't know that people will have the same love for the cars of this generation. Will you be walking through a car show 30 years from now admiring a Honda Civic? I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe, but will collectors at that point still covet a Shelby or something built in the 70s? Absolutely they will. And they'll be worth a fortune and people will always love them.
Yeah, I actually never thought of it that way. That like, what is the landscape of car collectors gonna look like? By the time that we're in our 80s, that the cars that we grew up with. Like, is anyone really gonna like what is it? I think it's the Honda Civic 2011. Yeah, like this. Like, are we really gonna
Yeah,
have these as collector items in the
I
future?
don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, but the tide is kind of turning because people my age are starting to collect and we're looking at the cars that were really popular when we were kind of younger. So when I was a kid, we played Need for Speed, the
Mm-hmm.
first one on on a computer, not a console. And the cars that were in Need for Speed were things like the 94 Dodge Viper. And I think now we're starting to see collectors looking at cars from the 90s and we want to own the cars that we thought were cool when we were kids. And now we're kind of at the age where we can start to afford what I think are still really cool cars, man. So even owning the 96 Camaro, it's not a 70s or 80s Camaro, which are obviously super valuable, super cool. But a 96 Camaro is something that I would have seen on the road when I was a kid. And to be able to own one and get to drive one around is pretty cool. Um, and in 20 years from now, 90s cars will be equivalent to those 70s or 80s cars.
Yeah, for me, if I had all the money in the world, I'd definitely want to have one of these. It's just for the headlights alone. I love
Oh,
how
yeah.
how silly it looks.
Yeah, those were a big deal. I still see them every once in a while. Very, very much a summer car for uh, people my age and a little bit older, I think.
Yeah, that actually reminds me. If you're into car photography, there's a gentleman that we interviewed not too long ago. I want to find his work because I think you'd like it a lot. Bear with me for 1 second. Oh, Isaiah, that's right. Yeah, he sets up these shoots, so he'll like arrange it with the car owner, and they'll go like out to specific
Wow.
locations. But they make a whole thing of it. He's done shoots for a couple of years now. Not all luxury cars, but a good chunk of them are like customs or
Yep.
imports, and yeah, the shots are, I mean, outstanding when they
Yeah,
come
those are
out.
incredible.
He had a couple, yeah, they did with his Ferrari.
Wow. Yeah, those are incredible. What I like about them is they aren't the overly clinical, stylized car shots that you typically get. Um, Those are very cool. They have more of an artistic feel to them. I also like the settings that he's choosing. Um, these aren't track shots. These seem to be a mixture of something I would shoot, but with a very cool luxury car or a supercar.
Oh yeah, it doesn't look like he goes out of his way to find shots or like locations that are like super unique or anything. Like it's just places that you would otherwise drive by
Yeah.
and wouldn't think twice. Like they recently did a video out in Joshua Tree, which I believe
Oh,
is a
cool.
national park somewhere in California, I
Yeah, it's in
believe.
California. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a Kodak Gold.
Yeah, he does shoot and film on occasion. He does digital as well, but
Yeah.
yeah, they'll just go out to these locations, set up a shoot, have the director, or have the driver rather set up the car in a specific location and have at it. Yeah, but otherwise, like
Yeah,
it's
those are sweet.
just normal, not super exotic locations. Like this one, yeah, that definitely stands out, but otherwise, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, those are awesome. Great photographer.
Yeah, I think he's got his own clothing label now. They're actually working on creating like a magazine that's made to look
Wow.
like late '90s kind of like auto mag with the old style design with all these different shots. Because he
What
also like as going up as a photographer, he was like, man, like I guess when you have a photography book, like that's when you've made it, and we haven't done one, so might as well.
what a cool idea. That's awesome. All right, buddy, I gotta get going.
Oh yeah, fair enough. I was actually going to ask. Don't want to keep you hanging. I know you got the rest of your day out there for you.
Yeah, I got
Um,
some stuff to do.
in any case, thank you so much for making the time today. I had a lot of fun chatting. I
Yeah,
love
this is
your work.
awesome. Thank you.
I love how it, as you said, captures these seemingly mundane moments, but there's a there's a charm to it that you really can't get elsewhere.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much for chatting with me.
Right on. So in terms of socials, people can just find you at NowhereOnt on Twitter. Are you on Instagram as well, or
I am, but not as much. X is the place to be.
okay, right on. Yeah, we'll send people your way here. And yeah, once again, thank you for making the time today. Yeah, not really much else to say. I had a good time.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right, buddy. It was nice to meet you.
Likewise. All right, take care, guys. We'll see you later.
See ya.